Have you ever heard a story that just sounds impossible? Today, we are diving into one of those. It's an incredible event from Islamic tradition, the splitting of the moon. And really, this is about more than just a miracle. It's a fascinating look at human nature and that tricky relationship between what we see and what we choose to believe. And that really brings us to the core question here. What happens when you're faced with undeniable proof, something you see with your own two eyes, but it completely shatters your worldview? How people answer that is the key to this whole story. So let's set the scene. We're in Mecca. The city's leaders are feeling the heat because the Prophet Muhammad's message is gaining ground, and they feel like their own authority is slipping. Their reaction? It wasn't to debate the ideas. Nope. It was to come up with a test they were absolutely sure he would fail. Now, to really get what's going on here, you have to understand where these leaders were coming from. They had already thrown every question they could think of at the Prophet, and he'd answered every single one. But this wasn't about finding truth. The source material makes it clear. This was about power. Their authority felt threatened, and their pride was on the line. So, what did they do? They cook up a strategy, and it's all about pride. The goal was pretty simple. Demand something so ridiculously impossible, so far out of the realm of what any human could do, that when he failed, his whole message would just fall apart. They wanted to see him fail, and fail big time. And their plan, it's pretty straightforward, really. It's a 3-step trap. First, you confront him in public. Second, you demand the impossible. And third, when he can't do it, which they were sure of, you expose him as a fake. To them, it was absolutely foolproof. And that plan, it leads right to this massive confrontation. But it doesn't just turn into an argument. It becomes a high-stakes bargain. The challenge is put forth, but it's met with a pretty surprising condition. And this is it. This is where they drop the bombshell. Their impossible demand. Just try to picture it. Standing there under the night sky, pointing up at a bright full moon and saying, "You want us to believe you? Fine, do that. Split it in half." Talk about an impossible task. But here's the thing. The Prophet's response is absolutely brilliant. He doesn't just say yes or no. He flips it and turns it into a deal, a binding contract. He basically says, you want to see it? Fine. But if I do it, if you see this miracle with your own eyes, then you have to hold up your end of the bargain. You have to believe. He puts all the pressure right back on them. And you know what? They agreed. Of course they did. In their minds, there was no way he could pull it off, so they said yes. The deal was struck. The stage was now set for this epic public test. Okay, so the terms are set. The crowd is gathered. And what happens next? Well, it's the whole reason we're telling this story. This is the moment that impossible demand was actually met. So everyone's waiting. And the Prophet, he doesn't do some big, flashy ceremony. According to the account, he just gives this one simple instruction to everyone gathered there. Look at the full moon. And so all eyes turn up to the sky. And then it happens. The moon splits. 2 separate pieces right there in the sky for everyone to see. The very thing they demanded, the thing they were sure was impossible, was happening right above their heads.
And you gotta understand, this wasn't some secret vision only a few people saw. No, this was public. The tradition says it happened exactly the way they asked for it to happen, and it was a spectacle for anyone in Mecca who just looked up. The proof they wanted had been delivered.
But this is where the story gets really, really interesting. Because what happened after the miracle, that's the most surprising part of all. Let's look at the reaction to what was, by their own definition, an undeniable sign. So right then and there, with the 2 halves of the moon probably still visible in the sky, the Prophet turns to the leaders, and he simply asks them to honor their agreement. He says, okay, I did my part, now it's your turn, fulfill your promise. And this part is just wild. You'd think the reaction would be, wow, okay, you did it, we believe, right? That's what you'd expect. But what actually happened was the complete opposite. According to the sources, they reacted with even more arrogance and just doubled down on their denial. So at the end of the day, when they're staring right at the proof that they themselves designed as the ultimate test, what do? They don't argue, they don't debate, they just run away. They literally chose to disbelieve their own eyes rather than change their minds. And that's what this whole story leaves you with, isn't it? It's this powerful idea that sometimes the biggest barrier to belief isn't a lack of proof. Sometimes the real barrier is what we think we'll lose if we accept that proof. It really makes you wonder, why is it that for some people, even seeing something with their own two eyes still isn't enough?